Hey everyone, I am Clint, I write comics, and this is my channel, Sweetcast. If you haven't subscribed, please do that, that really helps me out. I want to show you my book real quick. This video is going to be, I guess, a sequel of sorts. So we'll get this out of the way really fast. Downcast is my book. You'll notice there's a big jump in subscribers if you've been following me, or not subscribers, backers. We're at 29,451. Thank you, everybody. That's so great. We're getting really close to 30K. If you haven't backed it yet, we're almost 60% finished with the interior art and ahead of schedule. So if you want to get in, it's now is a good time to get in. Also, I know I'm going to be doing a stream with Peter Simeti from Alterna Comics to talk a little bit about their crowdfunding project that's going on. Alternaween, they're selling a bunch of books and t-shirts. I actually got a t-shirt. I'm just going to show it off here real quick. Pretty cool. This is a one that's been around, but they have some new t-shirts. I just had to show it off because why not? Alterna is saving the world. All right, so I made a video, I don't know, I think it was about a week ago, and I talked about boys and comics and how boys are being left behind. I'm not the one that initially said this. I think a lot of people are saying this. A lot of people are thinking it. Fewer people are saying it. But I have noticed that there are comic book pros looking at the situation, looking at sales, and they are addressing it. This isn't new. So I gotta wonder if Brett Booth watches my channel. Maybe not. Maybe not. Probably not. I'll say that. But he's still thinking the same kinds of things. I've got to think there are a lot of people thinking this. And that is, why are boys not reading comics? What could the industry do differently to reach out to boys? And then you'll also hear some really stupid arguments. It's basically just one argument that comes over and over again. It's based in ideology and not reality. If you look at reality and we forget about politics or ideology or anything like that, you've got to admit there are some steps that you could take to try and fix the problem, or at the least you got to admit that there is a problem. So here's Brett Booth on Twitter. He says maybe that's what's going on. People are assuming I'm blaming female fans for the loss of male ones. No, we've been losing male fans for like 20 years, far before the new influx of female ones. They're not to blame for anything. We're happy to have them. And his part 2 here, I'm just not sure there will be enough to sustain the industry as sales are still declining for the big 2 overall. So if we can also bring in new and lost male readers, that might cover the spread and even cause growth, which is good for everyone. Now, if you're just looking at the facts, this makes sense. It really does. Like, why not reach out to all the fans that you possibly can? Not just all the fans, but there's something to be said for reaching for proven fans. It doesn't matter what business you work in. If you worked in a business, we'll say like a cleaning company or something, you clean carpets, you're going to have better success by reaching out to people who have had their carpets cleaned before in the past, because you already have demonstrated that they have a tendency to want to pay for carpet cleaning. Okay, you're going to have a much more difficult time converting new customers that have shown no interest in having their carpets cleaned. The same is true for everything. This is just business. It's not racist. It's not sexist. There's nothing else to it other than business. It just so happens that in comics, that proven market happens to be boys. Okay, so I followed this big Twitter conversation. I'm not going to show you everything. There are people like Aaron Alvarez that were putting in their 2 cents on it as well, and it kind of got into this thing where everybody's quote tweeting each other, and it's really obnoxious because it's difficult to follow, especially if you're trying to make a video about it. But I will do my best, and I cherry picked some of the things out. So here we go. This was Spider-Man Noir said, "You're happy to have us, but don't think we can sustain the market yet," instead of suggesting maybe looking at the kids comics market, which we find draws in more readers every year to the point major publishers are getting into graphic novels and comics. You jump on to focus on men. Yeah, and so this is the thing. Focusing on men can't possibly be the answer, right? This is where ideology gets in the way. You've got to do something else other than focusing on men. Now, he didn't say men, he said boys. He did say boys, and if we look here, he's actually clarifying where he said males. There is a difference. There's age differences. Brett says, I said males, which includes boys, which was the key demographic, but used males because it takes men as well. And I'm specifically talking about the superhero books at the big two. Sales continue to slide. So whoever wants to read should be welcomed. All right, and then here comes Aaron. I keep wanting to call him Elvin. Aaron Alvarez with this is the ideological right thing to say, but it is actually, it's just provably false. He says,
males are marketed to by default, in all caps. Walk into any local comic shop and the majority of the content is male-oriented, boys included. You argue for representation for both when women plus LGBT people of color,
okay, so here's the thing. He's not arguing for representation. This is not a representation argument. That is an ideological line of thinking. This is a business argument. If you know that you have demonstrated there's some success for superhero comics, big two publishers that it appeals to male readers, you should be filling up your pool constantly with new customers, constantly. And so to say that males are the default is actually really wrong. And you'll hear this everywhere, that white males are the default. This is just the way that it is for everywhere, so you have to make up for some kind of past wrong. That has nothing to do with keeping an industry alive. That has everything to do with perpetuating your ideology. So we'll hop on to the next one, speeding right through this. Brett Booth says, doesn't mean they've been actively marketed to. They're just assumed to be reading. That's a great point. That is a great point. It's just the assumption that if you're making superhero comics, you don't have to try to reach out to your core audience. And I would say it wouldn't take a lot. Again, this is low-hanging fruit. If you're really interested in just bottom line sales, you would want to reach for that low-hanging fruit. And yeah, of course, you go ahead and reach out to other demographics and find new readers wherever you're finding them. I don't have a problem with that. But you should still be serving that target demographic by listening to them and finding out what it is that they want. And it's not just, well, we're making superhero comics. Oh, you don't like being talked down to in the comics that you read. You don't like it that all the creators that write your comics hate you, and they're very vocal about it, as you can see. Right, obviously this is really silly. So Aaron Alvarez responds,
again, how are you going to market harder toward the base already being marketed to by default?
It's not default. That's not how it works. You are marketing to your target market. Marketing is the one thing I think it's missing from mainstream comics. They're just publishing. That's not marketing. You've got to do something to reach out, to get your product to market and to let people know about it. That's what marketing is. Okay? There's no default. It's something you actively have to do. It doesn't just happen. Default is a stupid word when it comes to business, when it comes to any of this stuff, but I keep seeing this argument come up. He continues.
Your answer keeps going back to nostalgia, which seems to be your nostalgia.
No, he didn't say. This is actually a business argument. I got to say, it is a business argument. It has nothing to do with anything else. So Brett Ruth responds, ugh, maybe books aimed at boys. There aren't many. All right, I'm going to stop him there because obviously the argument is, well, what do you mean? Superhero comics have always been targeted to boys. They're all represented by male superheroes. They're targeted towards boys. You have to recognize that it has more to do with what the main character looks like. And I wish, it's so obnoxious that comic creators don't understand this. Your readers are a little bit smarter than you give them credit for. They're not just looking at, oh, Spider-Man looks like me, therefore, this is ideology speaking. This is not the way it actually works. It has to do with the content of the story, action, the kind of stakes, the wish fulfillment, all these kinds of things. And this information already exists. You could easily, they teach it in writing classes. It's basic stuff that you could harness and use. But no, it becomes about representation. You're looking at the wrong book. It's the wrong book of ideas in order to get this. It kills me to see it happen in action. Okay, and here's the crux here. I don't even know who this is. Our Bread and Circuits. Here we go.
Says, I'm really trying to see your point here. Tim Seeley, who I read, said the same not long ago, and Comicsgate jumped all over it, so he didn't follow up. Seriously, I really do not see this vacuum for boys in comics. I'm trying not. I don't know how the big two are failing boys.
This could be something that is actually addressed. It could be, and I think it would be money well spent. You know what you could do is get a focus group. You could pick a group of boys, men, whatever age group is really your biggest selling target demographic, or the demographic that has been shrinking the most, because that demographic is the one, they shrink the most. They're also the biggest. They're the low-hanging fruit. That's going to be the easiest to make some gains. And of course, do it with women, whatever. But don't exclude that one group because you believe in this whole default idea. That's silly. You got to get past this. You have to get past this if you want to fix it. If you got to fix sales, right? That's the important thing. And so you get a group of boys, you sit them down. Maybe some of them have read comics in the past. Maybe some of them haven't. You could probably, what I would do is pick a group of boys that used to read comics, and I'd probably pick another group of boys that are at the age where generally people would be getting into comics. And then you do a focus group and you ask them a lot of questions and you show them some comics and you find out why they don't read those comics. This would be targeting your target demographic, and it'd be reaching for the low-hanging fruit, and it doesn't have anything to do with ideology. It doesn't have anything to do with representation. You're just asking your customers, or people that should be your customers, why they aren't buying, and I think you could learn a lot of things from that. The other thing here too is that Comicsgate gets brought up, and I made a video based on Tim Seeley's. You should definitely watch that. I think it's called "The Industry Has Abandoned Boys" or something like that. I made a video on that. Okay, and so people see those kinds of things when you're making comments, and we see, Caffeinated Comic Books here, Andrew also commenting, really good guy. And so if it's anything that anybody related to Comicsgate has an opinion on, then you got to avoid it, right? This is silly thinking. You got to move past this. You have to move past this because this is getting serious. I am like, the sales are a problem and everybody is noticing it. It has nothing to do with the culture war. This has everything to do with sales at this point. Brett Booth continues, sales continue to drop even with the influx of new female readers. Sales are still not good. Since the late 90s, we've been losing males, and specifically young male boys who used to replace older ones. This stopped happening, so no new influx of readers to replace older ones. Yeah, again, great point. And then he continues, and while the books are still made for both, comics do not actively court boys now. DC recently made a big push to bring in girls and Marvel as well. And this seemed to work. So why can't we get those same boys back now just as well? Really, all this is about. Exactly. Marvel is publishing so many titles. I would argue, if I was in charge of Marvel right now, I would have every single title have a target demographic that you're going after. Having titles that target girls and women is fine. That is great. Go ahead and have those books. You should also have books that are, it's stated in their mission from the editor that this book is intended to target these young boys that would usually be reading comics. And you should be presenting those comics to young boys and doing your darndest to make those look like the kinds of books that boys today find interesting. Okay, things do change, the trends change, all that kind of stuff, but you got to figure out what it is that your customer wants and serve it to them. That doesn't make you racist, bigoted, homophobic, nothing. That is how business works. That is how every other kind of entertainment works. But for some reason, comics hates that fan base. They don't want them. They're searching for something else. This is yet another retweet. Here, this time retweeting Brett Booth. Cheryl says,
it's not content or characters. Those books cater directly to boys and do for some time. It's the activity. How do you get young boys interested in the activity of reading? Making boys and shaping an entire industry to cater to them wasn't enough and drove girls away.
Well, actually it was. I mean, comics used to sell really well, right? There were decades that comics were such a, primarily made for boys and they sold really well. So obviously that's not what changed. Something changed. You can't just attribute it to, well, boys don't read. They don't, right? On average, boys aren't reading enough. But I will say, you know what? My son gets excited about a comic. Do you know what comic that is? It's Dogman. It's not Marvel or DC. We're talking to people that made Captain Underpants, and it comes in a little book and it's published through, I don't know, Scholastic or something. It's still a comic. You flip through it, it's a comic. The format, it looks totally different. The art looks, it's Captain Underpants art, but it's funny. It hits the right kind of notes. It's really silly and goofy. That's the kind of stuff he likes. He's 8. You could be doing this. Marvel could be doing this too. They could, but they're not. They're still focused on collectors and on any of the new readers they're looking for, or anybody but boys. It doesn't matter about representation. All right, Brett Booth says, boys haven't been marketed to in a long time. Collectors have. There's a difference. All I'm saying is to try to get boys back in addition to getting more girls. Yeah, great point. Man, Brett Booth is killing it. I don't know. I'm pretty sure he doesn't like me. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Maybe he watches the channel. It just seems like I'm just used to everybody blocking me. I had to look at all of this on my alternate account because I've just blocked by about half the people in this whole thread. But this is, again, very interesting, and I think good commentary. I love seeing creators starting to think about these things outside of culture war. Here's the next one. I think we agree here too, to some degree. Brett Booth says, I think video games took boys in the late 90s, so we've been limping along. I only suggest this because there's an upswing of early 90s back issue sales. Thought we might be able to get some back if they were picking up older books by doing some marketing toward them. Okay, here's another response. The problem is not video games. The problem is that the industry never dealt with the fact that the easy market for print was ending. Beside that, the future of comics does not rest with Disney and AT&T. They are not publishing the best comics. Maybe that's true. Maybe they don't care about comics. Last one here from Brett Booth. He says, there's a lot of issues to unpack. I blame video games, but it's not like they did it on purpose or anything. They just offered something that attracted a portion of they did something that attracted those readers that were normally reading comic books. They instead were getting, they were getting that satisfaction from video games. And I don't know, it was less expensive, cheaper, whatever it was. They're getting it from video games rather than comics. I don't know, maybe it's more complicated than that. But again, I'm still really happy that these things are being discussed. Now, the problem with the idea that there's this default, like our men have been catered to for so long that it's not their turn anymore. This has nothing to do with marketing. And I really do feel like this is the problem. This is what's causing such terrible sales, is because that's how it's always thought of. So college is the same way. People will say the same thing. Well, it's a man's world. It's been built for boys and men. And so we need to get everybody else. Well, the truth is that men, and it's right here, men are actually currently, and it's going to be more so in the future, they're actually the minority in higher education, in college. Attending college, they are the minority, a demographic that is no longer marketed to, no longer desired, whatever it is. I get it. This is a whole bunch of different complexities, but this is the reality that we're looking at, and it's outside of ideology. Here, just from this article, this fall, women will comprise more than 56% of students on campuses nationwide. According to the U.S. Department of Education, some 2.2 million fewer men than women will be enrolled in college this year, and the trend shows no signs of abating. By 2026, the department estimates 57% of college students will be women. And this kind of sums it up. The new minority on campus, men. It's that easy that things change. Now, I'm not trying to be divisive with any of this. I'm hoping that this would be an issue that in comics a lot of people could come together on. Again, beyond ideology. You can't deny that there's a sales problem, and if you do, I think you do it at your own peril. How do you get to your core demographic that has already shown that they buy comic books? I think you need to talk to them, and you need to give them exactly and very precisely what it is that they want. because other forms of entertainment have figured this out. You want boys reading, parents want boys reading. Trust me, they do. And I think boys are willing to read, especially in comics, because it's a medium that works. It works for boys, and yeah, it works for girls too, and that's great. But yeah, to deny this, I think is just a bad idea. So thank you. I know this was a little bit longer, but it's totally worth talking about. Really interested to know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Check out Nouncast. Don't forget to like, subscribe. I mean, share this out too. This is a discussion I think that needs to be had. How would you reach out to boys and actively market to boys? I'd be really interested to hear what your ideas are. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.